Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Alex in Wonderland here. Big Al, as I'm often commonly referred to. Guys, it's been a while. As I've alluded to in previous videos, I wanted to hit you with a book review or a let's talk about. Tonight we're going to do that. Last week, I finally finished The Count of Monte Cristo. In prior videos, I mentioned that I'd been reading this book. It took me a while. Big old book, about 1,200 pages, 1,243 pages, if I remember, something along those lines. And yeah, it was quite the journey. It was quite the ride, guys. Count of Monte Cristo, Alexandre Dumas, about a young man, Edmond Dantes, who has a lot going on for him. 19 years of age at the start of the book, I believe. On his way to being captain of a ship, works for a prestigious kind of seafaring company. Engaged to his childhood sweetheart, Mercedes, or Mercedes, I don't know how you would pronounce it back then. Mercedes, who knows. Very beautiful young lady. Edmund's got a lot going on. Unfortunately for Edmund, however, he's got haters in his midst. Okay? People are smiling in his face, but they don't actually wish him well, unfortunately. Okay? And that's a lot like life. So you be careful who's around you, but that's a whole different conversation. Edmund's haters dislike him for a few different reasons. They all have their own gripes. I mean, there's two main betrayers or deceivers. Danglars, who works on the ship with Edmund, and Fernand, who is madly in love with Edmund's fiancée, Mercedes, whatever you want to call her. There's another guy kind of involved who, like, if I'm correct, Caderousse. Maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, guys. I don't know. Apologies if I'm butchering names, but Caderousse is like friends with Danglars. Caderousse kind of, I think he's like Edmund's dad's neighbour or rents a room in the same house. But kind of Danglars tempts Caderousse to kind of go along with the ploy, the betrayal, the deceit. But mainly it's kind of because Danglars is jealous that Edmund is such a fine young man on his way to being captain. Danglars also works on the ship. I don't think he's not got it in him. He's not that guy. So he's not considered for the role. So he's a bit salty. He's a bit jealous. And kind of like the three of them choose to betray young Edmund. They make false accusations about him, about his political leanings and his political standings. But Caderousse is kind of hesitant. He's not like he's a bit drunk, I think, if I remember when it all goes down, and he's not really his heart's not in it as much as the other two, as the pair, Fernand and Danglars. But essentially, on like Edmund's celebratory night before he gets married, and they've got an official name for it in the book, the kind of pre-celebrations, Poor Edmund is arrested. Again, the false accusations come to light about him being a Bonapartist. Again, that must be how you pronounce it, right? You can't be a Bonapartist. You can't be a supporter or a fan of Napoleon in those times. He gets chucked in prison. But on the way to prison, he's kind of betrayed again, almost done dirty by this kind of magistrate, this legal man called Villefort, who, for reasons which I won't kind of go into, I'll try and keep this as spoiler free as possible, but he kind of doesn't do his duty properly, and kind of he doesn't administer the law in the correct way. And you'll find out why if you read the book. So Edmund is kind of done dirty by kind of two guys that he knows almost. Well, he knows Danglars. He's not too fond of Fernand. I think he knows Fernand is in love with his fiancée, but he also kind of gets screwed by the legal system, and kind of justice isn't dished out fairly or properly or truly. But essentially Edmund gets put in prison, and he stays in there for a very long time. I guess it's a spoiler. Like I said, I will kind of say that I'm kind of going to mention bits that people may not want to hear, but 14 years, if I'm correct. So he gets put in at 19, and he comes out at 33. But during his time in prison, if I'm correct again, I won't double check the book, but it's Château d'If. I think that's the name of the prison. This kind of solitary prison on an island surrounded by sea. He meets this crazy man who, whilst appears crazy to the kind of prison wardens and guards, Edmund kind of becomes friendly with him. They kind of meet up in the middle of the night because they're kind of in separate cells, but they find a way to meet up. I've forgotten the crazy man's name, which is terrible, crazy man. But he keeps banging on about treasure. He knows where this great, vast wealth and treasure is buried. And he tells Edmund where to find it. And he's also very smart. He's a man who knows a lot, and he teaches Edmund a lot over the years. But essentially, they plan on escaping. Edmund goes off, and he finds the treasure on the island of Monte Cristo. And that's where the book kind of changes. Like, not changes, but that kind of subsection, that introductory period. Edmund goes to the island of Monte Cristo, and he secures the treasure, and then it kind of cuts off, if I'm correct, and we kind of shift characters a bit, and we're introduced to two new characters, two young men, Albert and Franz, and this is where things kind of start interweaving, and the plot kind of kicks on a bit. But essentially, these two young men are one more than other. Albert is kind of crucial to the whole kind of quest for revenge from Edmund, from the Count of Monte Cristo, basically. But yeah, like, I don't want to say too much about it, but basically Edmund becomes the Count of Monte Cristo, and he goes on his quest for revenge against all those that betrayed him and wronged him when he was a young man. And we meet all these different characters on the way, and we are introduced to old characters, and it all ties in. So the book goes hard. Okay, let's just be real. The book goes hard. Like, who doesn't love a good revenge story, right? Nothing made me happier than young Edmund not getting revenge necessarily, but at least escaping prison and becoming rich. I don't think young Edmund even enjoys getting revenge at the end, but that's kind of, we'll talk about that later. But essentially, Edmund becomes one of the richest men in the world after finding the treasure, or maybe not the world, but he just becomes absolutely minted, and he just has the power and the resources to kind of extract revenge, right? And he finds out about the individuals who wronged him. They've done very well for themselves, Danglars and Fernand. Caderousse not so much, and Villefort, the legal bloke, he's done very well. He's like the top dog in Parisian law. He's like the crown prosecutor. But yeah, essentially the Count just kind of uses his money, and he turns up in Paris, and he essentially starts making things happen. Okay, so he starts, and I can't remember exactly because there's so much goes on, but he starts plotting and scheming back, and he kind of, yeah, he's the man, he's the GOAT. The Count of Monte Cristo is the man, all right? He's good looking, he's wise, he's rich, he's got aura, he's got mystique. Nobody knows how he really got all of his money. Nobody knows who he truly is. My one gripe with the book, I guess, is that we're constantly told about the Count of Monte Cristo and his aura, like I said, and how kind of cool he is. Wise man, knows everything about everything, cultured, speaks multiple languages, physical, smart, emotionally in tune, spiritually adept. But we never really kind of ever hear about how he gets that way. We only ever know that he comes into loads of money, loads of gold and wealth and diamonds, but there's no real background on any of his exploits or his journeys or kind of what made him into the man that he is. Fair enough, he spends 14 years in prison and he learns a lot in there from the crazy guy, but he kind of just comes on the scene and he's revamped. We go from Edmund to this like older gentleman, refined man, and we just kind of take the book's word for it in a sense that he is that guy, he's the GOAT. However, a lot of it, you don't hear anything of his backstory of the years that passed. We just know that he spent a lot of time in prison, he come across the money, he's travelled everywhere, he's done this and that, but it never really goes into detail about it. The book kind of solely revolves around Paris, Parisian society, high society, and essentially we are reintroduced to all the individuals that did Edmund or the Count of Monte Cristo dirty at the start. And like I said, they're all doing very well for themselves. So Danglars is a very rich banker. Fernand is now Count de Morcerf, and he's also done extremely well. Villefort, like I said, top crown prosecutor, top of the game, high society. They're all living life. They're all living lavish lives. The Count comes on the scene and he starts making things happen, like I said. And it's pretty interesting because as you go, you kind of, it all kind of starts, more and more is revealed, and you realise, all right, so the Count is basically in Paris. He's also mingling with these rich Parisians and these kind of rich individuals, and they're going to balls and they're going to the opera and they're enjoying whatever high society enjoys. And he's just interacting with them, and the people that he's betrayed, or rather the people he was betrayed by at the start, are not, they don't know that it's Edmund, essentially. All right, they meet the Count. Essentially, the Count helps Fernand's son, and that is how he gains trust in society. He helps Albert, and from that he kind of then goes on and does all these little favors for people, and that's how he gains everyone's trust. But throughout the book, the Count of Monte Cristo is kind of mingling and hanging out with all the individuals that betrayed him at the start of the book, but they have no idea it's him. They have no inclination that this is young Edmund who's gone through this crazy transformation. Obviously not. I mean, they think he's back in prison. They think he's still stuck on the island and he never escaped. And it doesn't even cross their mind. But essentially, Edmund, or the Count of Monte Cristo, weaves and works his way through, and again has these different plots and schemes, and he doesn't actually physically kind of really get hands-on with anyone. He just unravels secrets and dirty laundry and kind of reveals skeletons in these individuals' closets, and he kind of ruins their lives back. Look, I read the book. It took me a while to finish it, balancing life along with reading this book. I tried to get through it, not as quick as I can, but I kind of chipped away at it every day. It was a great book. It was a really good story, and I think we can all at least sympathise with Edmund. And the beauty of the book is that excuse me, guys. The beauty is, from the get-go, I don't know about you, but I fell in love with Edmund straight away, right? Like, I was rooting for him. You can't help but love him from the minute you meet him. Young man, humble, smart. He's grateful. He's about to get married. He's about to get promoted. He's a cool guy. He looks after his dad. Works hard, very good at what he does, loves his woman. He's very cool. So from the get-go, Dumas has a way of us really rooting for Edmund. Obviously, we're supposed to root for him. However, he really writes the character well. And another gripe, or maybe I don't know if I've already griped, but is that there's a disconnect, in my opinion, between the Edmund we once knew and loved from the Count, right? Like, and that's understandable, right? Because in a way, the Count almost takes a back seat. Like I said, we don't actually hear anything about him or his exploits or what he was up to in the interim between leaving prison and then putting his plan of revenge into play. We merely kind of just see how he does it, how he arrives in Paris, how he sets up, how he meets people and whispers something here and finds out this and does that. But the Count almost becomes... I wasn't rooting for the Count as much, even though the Count is Edmond Dantes, if that makes sense. Like, by the time you're halfway through the book, or by the time I was halfway through the book, you've almost forgotten about what Edmund went through and who Edmund was, because there's such a disconnect between Edmond Dantes as a young 19-year-old, and now we've got the Count of Monte Cristo, who is the same guy, but he's like super buffed. Like, he's just unstoppable, and you are constantly reminded that in the book. Like I've said, handsome, unlimited money, been everywhere, knows everyone, can pull strings, can make things happen. He can buy a house there with, the nicest house, and he can buy horses, or he can make potions, or he's really good at shooting a weapon, a pistol, and he's a really good swordsman. He's just this complete guy, and you just kind of know that whatever happens, he is gonna win. He is gonna make what he wants to happen. Revenge is inevitable, essentially. And yeah, for me, he lost his human aspect a little bit. Yeah, you never hear from the Count's point of view. Like, the story is never told. Like, the Count will be sitting there pondering when I was a young man in prison, and that, that is left behind. And he makes these, like, he alludes to, like, suffering and what men have to go through, and trials and tribulations and betrayal, but he never directly kind of taps back into that childlike, not child, but young teenager, 19 teenager. He never kind of reverts back to that, and he never kind of, maybe upon thinking about it now, I wish he did do that, or it was written in such a way, because he's very cold and stiff. He doesn't actually, he's jaded. He's like a different character. He is a different character because he's grown from 19, and I think he's like 40 odd when he goes to Paris for revenge or whatever. But you kind of forget about Edmund, young, emotional, passionate, naive Edmund, and it's just, you've just got this machine in a sense that he's just there for one reason and one reason alone, and it's revenge, right? And he kind of, I'm going off on a tangent a bit, but the disconnect between Edmund and the Count of Monte Cristo in my eyes was apparent. Like, I would have liked the Count to have retained some of Edmund as a character, because it's just like, when I was first introduced to the Count of Monte Cristo in the book, I didn't even actually realise that it was Edmund. It took me a while, a minute. I don't know if that's me just being absolutely stupid. You get introduced to the Count when young Albert travels to the island of Monte Cristo, and the Count invites him into his like lair, and it's all decorated and it's crazy, and they're taking drugs and they're seeing beautiful women, hallucinating, blah blah blah. But at first I thought maybe the Count of Monte Cristo is a different character to Edmund. But then as it goes, you realise, no, this is definitely Edmund. But the disconnect is quite apparent. They're just two completely different characters, but they're not. They're the same. But not a massive gripe. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot that was great about the book. I mean, the whole book was great. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I mean, guys, give it a read. Just give it a read. What have you got to lose? I have not come into this prepared, and it's already sieved out of my mind. Like, I can't. Maybe it wasn't that good. No, it was. It was good, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But like I said, there was a period whereby I was almost getting bored. Maybe I expected revenge to be extracted in a different way from how it is done in the book. But Edmund really takes a back seat. The Count takes a back seat in a sense, and it's almost just, you're introduced to a whole bunch of other characters and how they interact and all the sub-stories and how they all interlink. And it is clever and it is good. But yeah, I mean, the first third of the book is very different to the middle, the second third and the third third, which is fine. But now when I think about it, I would have just liked to know and read a bit more about the Count, how he became the Count of Monte Cristo. Sure, we know that he came into unlimited wealth and now he's got an abundance of money, like I said, whereby he can do whatever he wants when he wants, and he does do that. And it's very apparent in the book that he just, like I said, he can do whatever he wants when he wants. But he just shows up on the scene mingling with Danglars and Fernand and Villefort, and none of them really seem to question, who is this man? What is he doing here? Like, they're all extremely rich and powerful themselves. The Count mocks them in every way, but they just kind of, where they're kind of maybe so shallow, and just the minute someone who's more, or appears to be richer and more powerful and more well put together, comes on the scene, they don't even question it. They let him in his house, they invite him round here, they go to the opera with him, they all want to get to know him, they all want to kind of interact with him. And arguably, in hindsight, maybe that's a bit weird, I don't know. Eventually they do start asking questions because things start happening to the betrayers, the deceivers, and they all kind of start slowly thinking, well, hold on, things were going swell until the Count of Monte Cristo showed up in our lives. Who is this man? What does he want? What is he here for? But that doesn't happen till the end of the book. The whole time they're just hanging out with him, and the Count is just mogging them, like making little comments and basically flexing his power and his wealth and his knowledge, and they all just lap it up. Maybe I expected revenge to be, like I said, extracted in ways which were different from how Dumas wrote about it, but then in hindsight again, I don't think the way it's pulled off is incredible, because it isn't conventional, in my opinion anyway. I thought Edmund was just going to go to war with these guys and just kind of shoot guys up and sword and stab guys up. Do you know what I mean? Like, I thought he was just going to go hard and just call them out straight, kind of come back onto the scene and just go, you betrayed me when I was young. I want your head, sir. But it doesn't go like that. He kind of plays slowly like a game of chess, and he moves a piece here and he whispers something to this character who then hears this, and then, you know what I mean? It's very calculated. But so much goes on in the book, and I'm not doing it justice. I'm essentially rambling. There's some really cool characters in the book, other characters, namely my favourite character of all time, not of all time, but in the book probably, Luigi Vampa, the head of the bandits. Luigi's the goat. And of course, Luigi Vampa, his backstory is really cool. When he's a young man and he's got this cute little girlfriend, and how he kind of becomes a bandit and the things that he goes through as a young man. And of course, Luigi Vampa is a hard geezer, right? He's not someone you mess about with. But of course, who does Luigi Vampa answer to? He answers to the Count of Monte Cristo, right? He's this like rough, rugged, rogue bandit who has been robbing guys since he was about 8 years old or something. But of course, the one guy that he doesn't dare mess with, and the guy that he answers to and will do anything for, is the Count of Monte Cristo. But again, the book just describes this. It just tells you this. And sure, Edmund spent 14 years in prison and he's got loads of money, but how did he actually cultivate this aura to the point where, do you know what I mean? I guess you could probably write a whole different book on the period of time, how the Count of Monte Cristo actually became the GOAT, the absolute bee's knees. But yeah, Luigi Vampa, you've got Morel, so like young Edmund, like I said, is going to be promoted to the captain of a ship. He works for Mr. Morel. Mr. Morel's kids are in the book. Edmund knows them when he's young. They grow up. The Count of Monte Cristo repays them. Do you know what I mean? And kind of, he just basically goes back in time and sorts everything out. He just goes back to when he was, whoever was part of his life, whether positive or negative, and he either rewards and helps and benefits those that were there by his side, or those that were good to him, and he essentially decimates those who are not. But the Count of Monte Cristo, or Edmund, in the end, he's quite a sad character, I think, because, right near the end, he's kind of, you can tell he's exhausted of life, and even all the money in the world and all the power and jewels and gold and traveling anywhere he wants. He kind of talks about it, I think, or he alludes to it, that he's sick of it. Do you know what I mean? He's done everything that he can do as a man. He would like to know what it is to be a poor man again. And I think, again, I won't say too much, but yeah. I'm being a bit picky and I'm talking shit about the book. I think partly because so much is good about it, and so it's just such a good book. Like, it really is such a good book. And I think the things that I'm picking out about me saying, like, I think I'm just upset that we don't get to hear or see more about the Count of Monte Cristo, because he's such a cool character. He's the GOAT. He is the man. And we all want to be the man, right? And we especially we love a rags to riches story. We love watching the underdog come from nothing and make his way to the top. We love someone who is good and true and pure, who gets betrayed. We love seeing them get revenge. And for me, revenge is sweet. I would have liked to know more about the Count. I would have just liked to see more or hear more of his exploits. But again, I think that's purely because of how good the book is. Like I said, it's hard to explain, and I'm not doing it justice, but he's just there. He's just there, moving from scene to location, and he just moves the pieces. But the book heavily focuses on Danglars, obviously, right? But like Caderousse's story is pretty cool. Caderousse is the one that doesn't fully kind of agree with the betrayal. His life doesn't end up too well in the end. Things don't go too well for him. But then, of course, and I kind of failed to mention, but Fernand ends up with Mercedes. Okay, that's a big, and you can probably, that's a spoiler, but it's always alluded to, and you know that them two are going to end up together. So Edmund's fiance, who he gets torn apart from at the start, partly because Fernand is extremely jealous, but she doesn't love Fernand, she loves Edmund. They end up together. And that's very interesting. Maybe anticlimactic. Maybe the Count doesn't get the happy ending he's after, but I don't think he was looking for a happy ending in the end. Not with Mercedes anyway. He just wanted to dish out revenge and destroy the lives of the people who destroyed his life. But he doesn't get the happy ending with the girl, and that's valid. He doesn't seem to care too much about that, I don't think. He's just too solid. He just doesn't care. But guys, I've tried my best. I've just rambled on for over half hour. The Count of Monte Cristo. I'll do a better video. I'll do a proper kind of, because I've just gone in blind here and I've just kind of done this again without any fault, and I've just rambled at you guys, but I don't think it's quite sunk in. I think I'm still processing that it's over, because I did thoroughly love every minute of it. I really did. And I've talked about some gripes, I think, but I don't know if they're gripes. I'm just kind of, you know what I mean. But it's really good, man. Like, it really is. And the Count just mogs everyone, man. And I miss him. And this is why I'm upset, because I just want to read more about the Count and how cool and suave and sophisticated he is. And he really is. And I'm so glad that I'm not glad that he got revenge, because I don't think he was glad in the end. And I think he even kind of ponders, did I go too far? Because there's kind of wider rippling effects on people, and he kind of, just messes everyone that betrayed him, their lives get messed up too. So an eye for an eye. But he even ponders, did I go too far? Was it worth it? Is this what I was after? Yeah, and he devoted a lot of time to this, right? Like his sole purpose, I think, was revenge. And in the end, he kind of just goes off into the sunset and gives all his money away. Valid. And he just goes and lives happily ever after. And he doesn't even get back with his true love. So it was all kind of futile. Well, it wasn't, because it's what he wanted. It's what he wanted to do, right? But guys, I'll make another vid. I've already been on video for 36 minutes. This book will change your life. I know it may seem like it hasn't done that for me, but I think I'm still processing it. I've started reading a few little things since. It's only been like 6 days since I finished this. Maybe I'll talk about it a bit more in another video. But I just wanted to make a video and talk a little bit about it. But I could talk for hours. I'd need to just remind myself a little bit about kind of the order of things. But again, I didn't want to talk too much about all of it, because a lot goes on. But guys, I just want to be the Count of Monte Cristo. I'm sure a lot of people out there do. I'm sure a lot of people have been betrayed. And we all want revenge. And we all want to become the Count of some island and find loads of treasure. And just become really cool and sophisticated, and everywhere you go, everyone just wants to get to know you and hang out and be in your aura. And that is essentially the Count of Monte Cristo. He just becomes goated, and I loved it. I'm the Count of Monte Cristo. You're the Count of Monte Cristo. Guys, it's been a pleasure. It's Alex in Wonderland. I love you guys so much. Goodbye. I'll speak to you soon.